The right window treatments change everything: your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 five-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 45% off with minimum purchase, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.
Testing season is right around the corner, and this is when confidence really matters. When kids take time to review key concepts and strengthen their skills before assessments, it can make all the difference. IXL helps reinforce what they're learning right now, so they walk into every test feeling prepared, capable, and confident. IXL is an award-winning online learning platform that helps kids truly understand what they're learning. Whether they're building math confidence, strengthening reading and writing skills, or reviewing science concepts. Designed for students from pre-K through 12th grade, IXL delivers personalized, interactive practice that adapts to your child's level and pace. It's an easy, effective way to support learning as the school year heads into its final stretch. Studies show kids who use IXL score higher on tests, proven in all 50 states. IXL is used in 96 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now, and listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXLlearning.com/audio. Visit IXLlearning.com/audio to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price.
How would you describe yourself? Fun? Sporty? Bold? If that's the case, meet the Kia K4 hatchback. Made for motion, adventure, and whatever you might decide to bring along. Or would you say you're more smooth, sleek, refined? If so, there's the Kia K4 sedan. Calm, confident, and ever so modern. 2 personalities, 2 available turbocharged ways forward. The Kia K4 GT Line Turbo and the K4 Hatchback GT Line Turbo. What turbo's you? Turbo is available on select K4 trims.
The house on Alder Street leaned slightly to the left, as if it had grown tired of standing upright. It was a narrow 2-story rental with flaking white paint and a porch that sagged in the middle. The lawn was patchy and stubborn, fighting for life in soil that never quite cooperated. Inside, the wallpaper peeled at the corners like old scabs, and the pipes in the walls knocked at night as though something were trying to speak through them. Grayson was 8. His sister Georgia was 10. They shared a bedroom at the end of the hall, 2 narrow twin beds, 1 small dresser between them, and a window that faced the back alley. In the summer, the alley smelled like hot asphalt and sour garbage. In winter, it smelled like nothing at all. Their mother, Gertrude, worked at the Longfellow Institute. She wore her nurse's whites like armor, crisp collar, hair pinned tight, shoes polished even when the soles were thinning. She left before sunrise most mornings, the house still blue with early light. She would move quietly through the kitchen, packing her lunch in a metal tin, the coffee percolator hissing softly as she poured it into a thermos. Grayson often pretended to be asleep when she kissed his forehead. Georgia never pretended. "You'll be back before dark?" she would ask. Gertrude always smiled the same way, tired but loving and measured. "I'll try." She rarely was. Their father, Walter, did not rise early. When he did, it was usually because the sun had found his face through the living room curtains, or because he had rolled off the couch where he'd fallen asleep fully dressed. He smelled of cigarettes and something sweet and sour that clung to the air long after he'd left the room. Walter had worked at the mill, then at a hardware store, then at a delivery warehouse. Each job ended the same way. Someone else's fault, someone else's disrespect, someone else's incompetence. He told the story loudly and often, pacing the kitchen while Gertrude stood at the sink with her back to him, shoulders tight. "They got it in for me," he'd say. "You think I don't see it?" Gertrude would say nothing. The children learned early that silence was the safest response to most things. By afternoon, the house belonged to Grayson and Georgia. They made peanut butter sandwiches themselves. They folded laundry when it buzzed angrily in the dryer. Georgia checked the mail. Grayson lined up his toy cars in straight, perfect rows along the hallway floor. They were close in the way children become when there are no adults available to mediate the world for them. Georgia read to him at night adventure stories, mysteries. She did all the voices even when she was tired. When thunder rolled overhead, Grayson would climb into her bed without asking, and she would let him. "You're not scared?" she'd whisper. "No," he'd lie. She would squeeze his hand anyway. Walter's jealousy was a living thing. It slithered into conversations and coiled there. If Gertrude came home late, he would already be waiting. "Long shift?" he would ask. "Yes." Or "long company." The children would watch from the hallway, invisible if they were lucky. Walter's voice never started loud. It crept upward slowly, like a stove burner turning red. Accusations without evidence, imagined glances, imagined men. Gertrude endured it the way she endured everything, quietly. When he drank, which was most nights, the house shifted. The walls felt thinner. The air felt brittle. Georgia would take Grayson into their room and shut the door. They would sit on the floor and play a game where they counted the seconds between raised voices. If something shattered, they started over. If something slammed, they counted faster. Grayson did not cry. He watched, he listened, he cataloged. He noticed how his father's boots left dirt in the same place by the door every night. He noticed how his mother's shoulders dipped half an inch lower each month. He noticed how the house seemed to sag more after arguments, as if absorbing impact. He began to dislike noise. He began to prefer patterns. He began to feel something else too, something he did not yet have a name for. A tightening in his chest when his father spoke to his mother that way. A heat behind his eyes that did not spill out as tears. It settled, sank down deep, became heavy. Georgia noticed. "You're staring again," she told him once, nudging his shoulder. "At what?" "Nothing," she told him. "That's the problem." She tried to keep him light. She dragged him outside to draw chalk cities on the sidewalk. She taught him how to whistle. She made up songs about their future. "One day," she said, lying in the grass behind the house, "we'll live somewhere quiet, with no yelling." The garage was Walter's domain. It leaned worse than the house, a crooked wooden box that smelled of oil and mildew. Walter kept tools in coffee cans and nails in old jam jars. He didn't allow the children inside unless told. That alone made it magnetic. One Saturday afternoon, after another job had evaporated and Walter had disappeared to a bar downtown, Georgia stood at the back door staring at the garage. "You ever wonder what's actually in there?" Grayson nodded immediately. They moved carefully, conspirators without needing to speak. The garage door groaned when Georgia lifted it, a long wooden complaint that made him freeze. When no voice shouted from inside the house, they slipped in. Dust floated thick in the beams of light cutting through the slats. The air felt older than the rest of the world. Boxes were stacked along one wall. A broken chair, a rusted bicycle frame. Newspapers tied with string. Georgia began poking through things, fearless in the way older sisters are. Grayson stayed near the entrance at first, eyes adjusting, mapping the space. "Look at this," she said finally. She had pulled a small wooden crate from beneath a workbench. Inside were old magazines, a cracked picture frame, and at the very bottom, a book. It was thinner than she expected, bound in faded cloth, once blue perhaps, now closer to gray. The title was stamped in silver lettering that had begun to flake. "Sleep Tight." Georgia brushed dust from the cover with the sleeve of her sweater. "That's creepy," she said, though she smiled when she said it. The best nights in that house were the ones where Walter was late. Gertrude stood at the stove in her pale blue house dress, sleeves rolled just past her elbows, stirring a pot of tomato soup that had been simmering since mid-afternoon. A grilled cheese sandwich browned in the pan beside it, butter hissing softly at the edges. The kitchen light cast everything in warm, forgiving glow. For a little while, the house didn't lean. It didn't creak. It simply held. Georgia sat at the table doing homework she had already finished, pencil tapping against her chin as she made up answers to questions no one had asked. Grayson sat across from her, lining up his fork and spoon so their handles were perfectly parallel with the table's edge. "School?" Gertrude asked gently, carrying the sandwiches over on mismatched plates. Georgia grinned. "Miss Donnelly says I read faster than anyone in class, even the boys." "Well," Gertrude said, setting down the soup bowls, "we can't have that. We'll have to slow you down immediately." Georgia gasped theatrically. "Mother!" Grayson watched them, smiling faintly. "And you?" Gertrude asked him, brushing his hair back from his forehead before taking her seat. "How was your day?" Grayson shrugged. "Fine." Georgia kicked him lightly under the table. "Tell her about the science project." He hesitated. I finished mine early." "Of course you did," Gertrude said warmly. "And what was it about?" "Patterns," he answered. "How things repeat." Gertrude nodded as if he had said something profound. "The world runs on patterns. That's very clever." He didn't mention that he had worked alone. He never mentioned that. Gertrude noticed anyway. She always did. "You know," she said carefully, dipping her sandwich into her soup, "friends take time. The good ones especially. The ones worth keeping." Georgia rolled her eyes playfully. "He doesn't need anyone. He has me." "That he does," Gertrude smiled. "But he'll find others. Boys who see what a thoughtful, kind young man he is." Grayson stared into his soup. The surface trembled slightly as he moved his spoon through it. Georgia leaned back in her chair, smirking. "Speaking of friends, Danny Miller walked me home." Gertrude's eyebrow lifted. "Danny Miller? He says I'm the smartest girl in 5th grade." "Oh, he does he?" Gertrude said, fighting a smile. "Well, Danny Miller can wait. 10 is much too young for suitors." Georgia laughed. "He's not a suitor." "Mm-hmm. He just carries my books." "That's how it starts," Gertrude replied solemnly, then broke into laughter when Georgia groaned in protest. For a few fragile minutes the house was alive in a different way. Spoons clinked, bread tore. Georgia told a story about a classmate who mispronounced volcano as volcanoe. Grayson tried not to laugh and failed. Even Gertrude let herself lean back in her chair and breathe. Gertrude did not speak of the patients at the Longfellow Institute. She did not describe the quiet hallways, the restrained hands, the muttered conversations with no listener. Those things did not belong at this table. This table was for soup and grilled cheese and the illusion that everything outside these walls could not get in. And then the front door slammed. The sound cracked the air in half. All three of them went still. Boots scraped against the floor. A body hit the hallway wall before correcting itself. The sour, unmistakable scent of whiskey arrived before Walter did. He staggered into the kitchen, tie half loosened, shirt untucked, eyes red-rimmed and swimming. "What is this?" he barked, looking at the table as if it had offended him personally. "Dinner," Gertrude said evenly. "We kept it warm as long as we could." Walter dropped into a chair too hard, sloshing soup onto the table. He dipped his finger into the bowl and jerked it back. "It's cold." "It's been ready since 5, Gertrude said softly. "We didn't know when you'd be." "So you let it get cold?" Georgia stiffened. "It's not cold," she said quickly. "It's just—" Walter's head snapped towards her. "I wasn't talking to you." The room shrank. Gertrude reached for Walter's bowl. "I can heat it again." He slapped the spoon from her hand. It clattered against the floor, skidding beneath the stove. "I work all damn day," he growled, though he hadn't. "And I come home to cold food." Georgia stood up. "Mom worked all day." She shot back. "You weren't even—" "Georgia," Gertrude warned, fear threading her voice. Walter stood too fast, chair's legs screeching. He swayed, then steadied himself by gripping the table. You think you can talk to me like that? He said, stepping towards her. She's 10, Gertrude pleaded. Walter, please. Go to your room, he ordered the children. Grayson had already half risen. Georgia didn't move. No, she said, her voice trembling but present. You don't get to talk to her like that. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Walter's face changed. Something dark and decisive slid into place behind his eyes. Go to your room. Georgia stayed where she was. Gertrude stepped between them. Please. Please don't. But Walter's hand shot out, grabbing Georgia by the arm. She yelped as he yanked her forward. Grayson froze, every muscle locked, watching as his sister struggled. Walter, stop! Gertrude cried, pulling at his sleeve. He shook her off like she weighed nothing. The sounds that followed were ones the house would remember. A sharp crack, a gasp, a sob strangled before it could fully form. Gertrude's voice breaking into something animal and desperate. Grayson did not move. He watched. He memorized. When it was over, Georgia was shaking. Walter shoved her toward the hallway. Room, he said again, breath heavy before collapsing back into his chair. Gertrude gathered Georgia, tears spilling freely now, guiding her down the hall. Grayson followed close behind. In their bedroom, Georgia sat carefully on her bed, wincing as she tried to lie back. On your side, Gertrude whispered, brushing her hair from her face. Just tonight. It'll feel better. Georgia nodded, biting down on her lip. Gertrude kissed them both and closed the door softly behind her. The room felt small. The alley outside was quiet. Georgia lay curled, facing the wall. Grayson stood still for a moment. Then he crossed the room to the small crate they had hidden beneath his bed. He pulled out the book. Sleep tight. He climbed onto the edge of Georgia's mattress, the springs creaking under his slight weight. I'll read, he said. Georgia managed a faint smile. You're going to skip the hard words? No, he said firmly. He opened the cover. The pages smelled old, dusty, important. He swallowed and began. A man from the shadows? Shadows, Georgia whispered gently. Shadows, he repeated. Who could smile in the night. His finger traced each word carefully. His name was Tuck. Georgia shifted slightly, wincing. Tuck, she confirmed. Grayson looked at the illustration on the page, a tall, narrow shape drawn in thick ink, standing beneath a crescent moon. Tuck children in, Grayson continued, stuttering through syllables but refusing to stop, and made sure the dark stayed where it belonged.
Breaking news from Good Ranchers. Over 85% of grass-fed beef in stores is imported. Most grocery store meat contains antibiotics, hormones, and harmful seed oils. Good Ranchers does things differently. All their meat is born and raised on local American farms. No antibiotics, no added hormones, no seed oils. Just one ingredient, meat. Visit GoodRanchers.com and get $25 off your first order with code RANCH25. That's code RANCH25 for $25 off your first order. GoodRanchers.com. American meat delivered.
Testing season is right around the corner, and this is when confidence really matters. When kids take time to review key concepts and strengthen their skills before assessments, it can make all the difference. IXL helps reinforce what they're learning right now, so they walk into every test feeling prepared, capable, and confident. IXL is an award-winning online learning platform that helps kids truly understand what they're learning. Whether they're building math confidence, strengthening reading and writing skills, or reviewing science concepts. Designed for students from pre-K through 12th grade, IXL delivers personalized, interactive practice that adapts to your child's level and pace. It's an easy, effective way to support learning as the school year heads into its final stretch. Studies show kids who use IXL score higher on tests, proven in all 50 states. IXL is used in 96 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXLlearning.com/audio. Visit IXLlearning.com/audio to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price.
How would you describe yourself? Fun? Sporty? Bold? If that's the case, meet the Kia K4 hatchback. Made for motion, adventure, and whatever you might decide to bring along. Or would you say you're more smooth, sleek, refined? If so, there's the Kia K4 sedan. Calm, confident, and ever so modern. 2 personalities, 2 available turbocharged ways forward. The Kia K4 GT Line Turbo and the K4 Hatchback GT Line Turbo. What turbo's you? Turbo is available on select K4 trims.
Gertrude moved through the kitchen like a woman racing the clock she could never quite beat. The late afternoon light slanted through the window above the sink, catching in the steam rising from a pot of boiled potatoes. She had already set out plates on the small wooden table, 3 of them evenly spaced. The 4th remained stacked in the cabinet. Walter never sat with them anymore unless it was to criticize. "I'm sorry," she said, tucking in a loose strand of her hair behind her ear as she stirred gravy with one hand and checked the oven with the other. "I have to leave as soon as this is done." Georgia sat at the table, posture straight, hands folded in front of her. There was something newly careful about her these days, measured movements, fewer expressions. Grayson noticed, though he didn't understand. "Another long shift?" Georgia asked. Gertrude nodded. "Yes. There aren't many nurses left at the Longfellow Institute. Some quit, some transferred, so we all have to cover more ground." She forced a smile. "But it just means I'm needed more. That's all." Grayson watched her closely. "Do you like that, Mom? Being needed?" Gertrude paused for half a second before answering. "Yes, I like to help people." She carried the food to the table and kissed George's forehead first, then Grayson's. She held them both a moment longer than usual. "You eat it while it's warm. I'll try not to be too late, okay?" The front door opened before she could reach it. Walter stepped inside, already peeling off his jacket, the smell of beer arriving with him. He stopped short when he saw Gertrude in her coat. "Running off?" "I have to go to work." He glanced at the table. "At least you cooked before you abandoned ship." Grayson felt it from across the table like a shift in weather. Gertrude picked up her purse. "Dinner's ready." Walter snorted. "It looks dry." He grabbed a beer from the refrigerator, twisted it open, and carried his plate into the living room without another word. The television flickered to life moments later, its globe bleeding faintly down the hallway. Gertrude hesitated only long enough to look back at her children. "I love you." "We love you too, Mom," Georgia said, her voice steady and flat. Grayson didn't know what time it was when he awoke. The room was darker than usual, the air thick and unmoving. He rolled toward Georgia's bed automatically the way he sometimes did when nightmares crept in. Her bed was empty. The blanket lay folded at the foot as if she had risen carefully. Too carefully. "Georgia?" he whispered. No answer. He sat up. That was when he saw it. A faint red glow bleeding across the hallway floor, thin and pulsing like something alive. He climbed from bed, feet cold against the wood, and stepped into the hall. The red light grew stronger as he moved towards his parents' room. It wasn't bright. It was soft, saturated, like light filtered through closed eyelids. "Georgia?" he called again, quieter now. The door to his parents' room stood slightly ajar. He pushed it open. The smell hit him first. Metallic, wet, sweet and rotting at the same time. Georgia stood at the foot of the bed with her back to him. Her posture was rigid, shoulders squared, head tilted slightly downward as if listening to something only she could hear. In her hands, open and steady, was the book. "Sleep tight." "Georgia?" He stepped closer. That was when he understood why the room was so quiet. The sound wasn't silence. It was movement, a shifting, a writhing, a collective friction. The bed was alive. Walter lay on his back, mouth open in a frozen scream that would never finish forming. His body was barely recognizable beneath the mass that covered him. Bedbugs, hundreds, thousands, layered over his skin in a pulsing carpet of black-brown bodies. They moved in coordinated waves, surging and retreating as one organism. They crawled into his nostrils, into his ears, into the soft corners of his eyes. His eyelids were gone. The bugs burrowed into the wet hollows, disappearing inside as if entering tunnels made just for them. His cheeks twitched faintly as they consumed muscle fiber by fiber. His lips had been eaten down to his gums, exposing teeth stained pink with blood. The sheets beneath him were soaked through, dark red and shining, mucus and blood blending into a thick sheen that reflected the red glow in dull streaks. Every inch of exposed skin rippled. They tore at him methodically, efficiently, stripping flesh from bone in delicate, relentless bites. The mattress sagged under the weight of the swarm, saturated and humming with their hunger. The sound, soft, relentless chewing, filled the room like distant rain. Walter's chest rose once, twice, then sank. The bugs did not stop. Grayson's breath came in thin, silent pulls. He could not scream. He could not move. Georgia stood, whispering. Her voice was calm, even. He could hear fragments between the wet, shifting sounds. She turned the page slowly. Grayson stepped closer without meaning to. "Georgia?" She turned. Her eyes were black. Not shadowed, not dilated. Black. No white, no iris. Just depthless dark that swallowed the red light whole. She looked at him without recognition, without fear, without her. And she continued to whisper.
Cleanse the rot, send him back to the dark. Tuck keeps the bad men tucked away.
Morning came with a softness that felt obscene. Sunlight crept through the curtains in pale gold ribbons. Birds called from somewhere beyond the alley. The house no longer shouted. Grayson woke to the gentle pressure of a hand on his shoulder. "Sweetheart? Wake up." He blinked up at her. She looked tired, more than usual. "Have you seen your sister?" she asked, brushing his hair back the way she always did. His throat felt dry. He shook his head. "Has she gone outside? Is she with a friend?" She hesitated. "And your father, do you know where he is?" Grayson shook his head, more than once. Gertrude's smile faltered. She moved quickly down the hallway. Grayson stayed in bed. He stared at the crate beneath it. He knew. His father was gone. Georgia had made him go away. Relief flickered inside of him, small and shameful and bright, but it was swallowed quickly by something heavier. Georgia was gone too. He felt it the way you feel a missing limb, a space where warmth used to live. Downstairs, he heard drawers opening, his mother calling names that would not answer. "Where could they have gone?" she murmured, her voice thin with confusion. Grayson slid from his bed and knelt. He pulled the book from the crate. Sleep tight. Felt heavier now, warmer. If the bad men in the book could make bad men go away, then maybe they could bring someone back. He ran his fingers along the edges of the pages. There was only one way to find her. Page 366.
Little hands, little feet, tangled in the morning sheet. Sleepy eyes, you look at me like I'm all you'll ever need. Let the sun shine in, my love, throw the curtains wide. Let it paint your freckles gold, let it warm your wild inside. inside. If the world feels big and loud, you can always climb back in to these arms, to this song, let the sun shine in. Breakfast dishes by the sink, milk mustache and crooked grin. You ask how the bluebirds fly, I just kiss your puzzled eyes. Let the sun shine in, my love, throw the curtains wide. Let it paint your freckles gold, let it warm your wild inside. If the world feels big and loud, you can always climb back in to these arms, to this song with the sun shining.
You know that feeling when you're standing in the grocery aisle staring at a wall of plastic-wrapped chicken and gray-looking ground beef? For years, that was my routine. I'd grab whatever looked fine enough, toss it in the cart, and then spend the rest of the week trying to season the life back into it because it was just bland. But then I tried Omaha Steaks, and it completely flipped my script on quality. The first time I pulled a vacuum-sealed steak from my freezer, I realized I'd been settling for store grade when I could have had steakhouse grade. It's the ultimate convenience. I don't deal with the what's for dinner panic anymore because I have a custom plan delivered right to my door on my schedule. No more food waste from forgotten fridge meat, just high-quality proteins ready to go. Plus, it's a risk-free move. They have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Taste the Omaha Steaks difference and never settle for grocery proteins again. Get flavorful, high-quality proteins delivered by visiting omahasteaks.com, plus $35 off when you use promo code T-Bone at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, code T-Bone. Terms apply. See site for details.
SpringFest means more sun, more fun, and more free at Lowe's. Keep your yard in line with an additional free Ego 56-volt battery when you buy a select Ego mower, trimmer, or blower. Plus, keep landscaping fresh with Stay Green 1 cubic foot garden soil, 5 bags for $10. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/8 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
How would you describe yourself? Fun? Sporty? Bold? If that's the case, meet the Kia K4 hatchback, made for motion, adventure, and whatever you might decide to bring along. Or would you say you're more smooth, sleek, refined? If so, there's the Kia K4 sedan. Calm, confident, and ever so modern. 2 personalities, 2 available turbocharged ways forward. The Kia K4 GT Line Turbo and the K4 Hatchback GT Line Turbo. What turbo's you? Turbo is available on select K4 trims.